Today's stuff we're going to be learning is Gittin Daf Lamed Gimel. Today's sorry. All right. Okay. This week's learning is sponsored by Bob and Paula Cohen in loving memory of Chaim Avram Cohen ben Alter Gershon Cohen. That's my grandfather. And today's stuff is sponsored by Sylvia Klein in loving memory of her brother, Bobby Klein. Bobby taught us love, acceptance, and compassion. We miss you all these years later. Okay, we're going to get started with our topic. We were in the middle of Barishona Haya Oseh. If you remember, we're in the middle of takana Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel made this takana that you cannot cancel a get either in the court, or we weren't sure whether read in the court, any court. By the way, court doesn't mean court. Court could mean in front of any three random people. You just congregate three people together and you say that's a beit. So is the issue that takana Rabban Gamliel is you can no longer do it in front of any three people anywhere, or the language of the Mishnah was originally you could do beitin mimakom acher or bimakom acher. There's actually some difference in the girsa, but sounds like you could do a beitin somewhere else. Now you can only do it in the city where the wife is. The assumption is once you do it in the city where the wife is, so then already it's not far away and she'll probably hear about it. So there's a debate about what the post takana, what is allowed. Either is it only allowed to go to the shaliach or the woman to cancel it, and again it has to be before the get gets to the woman, or is it that it could even be in a court in that city but just not far away? So there's a machloka we started at the end of yesterday's daf, Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshet. How in front of how many people can you cancel this get? So there's different ways to understand. Didn't we just say you can't cancel in a court according to one option? So what are you talking about canceling in front of a court? Is a court 2, is a court 3, but why court at all? You're not allowed to cancel it in the court anymore. So either Rashi says we're discussing before the takana. Another commentary could say, right, if you hold it's the minei who says that you can actually cancel in a court, just not a court in a different city, it has to be in that city. Then we're talking about in front of how many people can you cancel in a court in your own, in the woman's city. Tosfot actually has an in-between position, which I didn't mention in the last class, which is, and it's going to be more relevant today. We're going to have today a machloket between Rebbi and Rashbag about what happens if you cancel in a court after the takana of Rabban Gamliel. So Rabban Gamliel says you can't cancel in court at all. Let's say you do it anyway, which basically means the husband saying, I don't want this get to be a get. So is it effective? So Rebbi says it is effective anyway. So then, according to Tosfot, they mentioned that you could say, this is according to Rebbi, who says it is effective. When would it be effective, though? It would have to be either in front of 2 or in front of 3, and then we get into machloket, Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshet. So it's another possibility of what they could be arguing about. So now let's get to their arguments. Rav Nachman says, Rav Sheshet's an obvious argument. Beitin in general, we've seen court many times. Beitin generally means 3 people. You see Adim, witnesses, you assume 2. Beitin, you assume 3. So where does Rav Nachman get a lot off saying that Dayanim, judges, could be 3, could be 2? So we're going to start with the last line of Daf Lamed Bet. Amar Rav Nachman mina minala. What's my proof? Ditnan mosrani lefnechem ploni uploni hadayanim shebamakom ploni. We're addressing this issue of prusbal. They're quoting a Mishnah, which we're actually going to get to and learn much more in depth. So we're not going to talk about it too much today. We'll get there in another few days. If you come to court and say, okay, in general, in the Shemitah year, your loans are canceled. But if you come into court and say, I'm giving you my documents, my IOUs, then the court doesn't have laws of Shemitah. So you can override Shemitah in this way. So now they say, what does it say there? Mosrani, what's the language you use? You say, Mosrani lifnechem, I am passing to you my documents. Ploni uploni hadayanim. Notice what it says here. So-and-so and so-and-so, the judges. There's only 2 judges mentioned there. So Rav Nachman says, look, seems like this could be done in front of 2, so therefore ours also could be done in front of 2. Okay, that are b'makom ploni. You mentioned where they live also. Okay. Rav Sheshet, what's Rav Sheshet's response? Atu tana kiruchla lichshav lezel. We've actually had this, we had this in Nazir also, this phraseology, which is, how can you prove from a Mishnah that kind of thing? The Mishnah's job is not to count and be so specific. It's not like a peddler who counts their wares all the time and is always checking their inventory. When they say ploni uploni, they didn't mean exactly ploni uploni. they meant so and so and so and so. And obviously they just cut short the third one, but they obviously meant also in the third one. Obviously judges are 3. Amar Rav Nachman, so Rav Nachman comes up with a different proof. So where can I prove it? Ditnan, what it says in that Mishnah there. Hadayanim chotmim lemata o ha'edim. It says there that the dayanim sign at the bottom or the witnesses. So now, in other words, this is the document where he basically brings it to the court and says, I'm giving you all my documents. And then either the judges could sign or the witnesses. My lab, dayanim dumia de'edim. Well, if it's enough to have 2 witnesses sign, don't you think it would be enough to have 2 judges sign? In other words, if it says it could be either or, it seems like they're kind of equal in terms of numbers. So ma'edim shnayim, after edim nam shnayim. So if edim can be 2, it seems like even judges, you can have it signed by 2 judges. If 2 witnesses are enough, why wouldn't 2 judges be enough? So what's Rav Sheshet going to answer? Rav Sheshet, midi iria, hakadita, bakadita. You can't prove from there. When it says judges or witnesses, it means if it's witnesses, 2 people sign. If it's judges, then 3 of the judges have to sign. And it's either 3 or 2, depending on who you decide to go with is signing it. So that doesn't prove anything. To which the Gemara asked then, according to you, Rav Sheshet, that it doesn't really mean anything. Well, so what was the point of saying the dayanim could sign at the bottom or the edim? It doesn't really add anything to what we already knew. To which the answer, what it's trying to tell us, a bit of a strange thing here, and there's a bit of a debate about how exactly to understand this, but I'll go with one of the interpretations, which is, it doesn't matter if you wrote the document as we, the judges, he passed to us, the judges, his documents. And then at the bottom, the witnesses who watch this transaction happen and watch the person transfer all the documents to the court, the 2 witnesses sign at the bottom. Alternatively, the witnesses could say, we witnessed the person giving his documents to the court. So the whole document is written in the language from the perspective of the witnesses. And then the 3 judges sign at the bottom of that document, not the witnesses. So that's what they're trying to say here when it says that the dayanim chotmim lamata o'aidin, it means they can do a crisscross. The language of the document could be written from the perspective of the judges and signed by the witnesses, or the reverse. That was just an aside. What we basically did so far was try to prove Rav Nachman that it could be 2 witnesses. He tries to prove it for 2 different parts of this Mishnah in Sheshet Shvi'it about Shemitah and cancellation of loans. In the end, Rav Sheshet at least has a retort, whether you believe Rav Nachman's position or not is left open. Now we finally get to why did Rabban Gamliel institute this takana that you can't cancel it in a court, okay, or in front of any 3 people. My mipnei tikkun haolam. Rabbi Yochanan amar mipnei takanat mamzarim. Rish Lakish amar mipnei takanat agunot. Rabbi Yochanan says that these are the 2 big central issues of Gittin. Either we're worried about mamzarim, the woman will get married and she really will not be an unmarried woman, but she was still married to the first husband, gets married to someone else and will have mamzarim children, or we're worried about women being stuck in marriage, agunot. So now how does this play out and how does this connect with the takana? Gemara is going to explain. Rabbi Yochanan amar mipnei takanat mamzarim. So first of all, we're going to connect this to the machlok that we started with today. If you hold that you can cancel the get only in front of 2 people, now there's always a concept in Judaism that once 3 people hear, you can assume everybody knows. Okay, you can assume it's called yesh lo la kala. It has a kol, has a voice. It will be passed around. This is the most relevant, and we talked about this before, is lashon hara. If you let's say start particularly more like richilu, like just saying, oh, so-and-so is, did something or whatever it is. If everybody knows about it, if it's public information, right, it was printed in the newspaper, it was, right, this could happen. So once it's public information, it's not called lashon hara anymore, okay? Or it's certainly not richilut, of like passing on. Maybe if it's something bad about someone, maybe you would have to think it's lashon hara. There's debate about how that all works out. But one of the big central ideas is once 3 people know, we assume word gets out. 2 people know, so that makes perfect sense. If he could cancel it in front of 2 people, she won't hear. If she won't hear, then we're worried that what will happen? she'll get the get. The shaliach will give the get. The shaliach won't hear. The woman won't hear because it was only in front of two people, which could be kept private, in which case they'll never hear. She'll go get married based on the get. And it turns out he canceled the get. So it's a problem. And that's mamzer. Ubeitre late lehukala, right? So now he's going to explain this whole thing. Two people, there's no kol, it doesn't get around. Vihi lo shama, so she won't hear. V'lo yada, and she won't know. V'az lo minsaban, she'll go get married. She'll have mamzerim children. V'ika mamzerim. Rish Lakish amar mipnei takana agunot. This one's a little more complicated to understand. There's several different interpretations what he means. I'll go give you two of them. Sabala kirav Sheshet, amar b'fnei shlosha. So basically, what the Gemara is going to really explain is why it can't be mamzarim, not really explaining why it is agunot. Okay, so well, bear with me. So since it's b'fnei shlosha, you have to do it. Once it's done in front of three people, we already said, beit plata it lehukala. So three, she's going to hear about it. V'shama v'yada v'lo minsava. So she'll know, and therefore she won't get married. So we're not worried about mamzarim, but what are we worried about? Well, this woman will not get married. Since she won't get married because she's not divorced, but she's also seemingly not living with her husband, so that turns her into takanat agunot hudiika. She is now an aguna. So we want to prevent, what we want to say here is, and Rashi explains it in this way, we don't want to make it easy for the husband to cancel the get. If the husband decided to give a get, and that's good for the wife, we assume right now at this point, right? Until, if you remember, there's sometimes where we don't think it's good for the wife, but once he's already giving her a get, presumably they're not living it anyway as husband and wife, and it's better for her to be able to go move on and go get married to somebody else. Probably also he's not financially supporting her or anything, and it's just an unpleasant situation. So at that point, we don't want to make it easy for him once he decided to give the get to now undo the giving of the get, because that will leave the wife in aguna. So that's why, according to at least Rashi, that's what the takanat agunot is here. According to Rish Lakish, that's how he understands why Rabban Gamliel doesn't allow it to be in a court. Okay. Another possibility, some people say, is that because women who are tzadkaniyot or something along those lines, where a woman might say the following, you can imagine such a scene, where the woman says, what happens? The husband sends a get, the shaliach brings her the get, she receives it, okay? If the husband gave her the get, there's no issue. But if she gets a get through a messenger, and this halacha exists, that the man can actually cancel it before she receives it in a court, okay? She might sit the rest of her life as an aguna and not get remarried because she'll always think in her head, maybe he canceled the get, and she'll be nervous to go marry someone, right, who wants to have mamzerim children. So the fear of actually still being married will be upon her, even though he likely didn't cancel the get, but she's worried that maybe he did, and she'll make herself an aguna, basically, and she won't get remarried, being in constant fear that the husband possibly canceled the get, and she just never heard about it. So that's another way of looking at it. It's a little bit of a weak argument because if it's done b'fnei shlosha, the point is she will hear about it. But again, she could always be worried that maybe she didn't hear. There's always a chance that you don't hear something, right? Every once in a while, I find out something that happened months ago, and I say, "Really, I didn't know that." Right? And people are like, "You didn't know that?" Everybody knows, right? Things that happen, we don't always hear about them. So it's possible that could happen. Okay. Next. Tanu rabanan. Now we get to this other machloket I made reference to in the beginning, which was bitlo mivutal. What if you go against the takana? The husband decides, I'm going to cancel the get anyway. Rabban Gamliel is takana machpatli. What do I care? So he goes to a beit and he cancels the get before it gets to his wife. So according to Rebbi, mivutal. If he does it anyway, bitlo, he cancels it. Mivutal, the get is nullified. Okay? She's not divorced. Even though Rabban Gamliel said don't do this, but people do things anyway, and it's effective, basically. Rashbag Gamliel, eino yachol lo levatlo v'lo lohosifot na'o she'im kain. Ready for the big words? Ma koch beitin yafeh. This is a very central sugya. Rashbag basically says he cannot cancel the get. He can't add on another condition. This doesn't seem really connected to what we're talking about. It's just something else he said, which is, let's say he said, to get under the condition, you give me 200 zuz. Okay, you give me money. And then he adds on to that and says, well, I mean 300. Okay, he adds on later to the condition. He can't do that. But let's just focus on our topic, which is you can't nullify the get after the takana, because if not, what's the power of the court at all? In other words, If Rabban Gamliel has the power to institute a takana, an ordinance, then we're allowed to make sure it gets kept. And if someone goes against it, if we start allowing, we say, oh yeah, well, it's effective anyway. Well, then what's that going to help? He was trying to rectify a problematic situation. It would become agunot or mamzarim. Now, if this guy doesn't care and goes against it, well, we can't let that happen because that undermines the power of the courts. And undermining the power of the courts is always a big central issue in the Gemara, because once you start undermining the power of the courts in this case, you'll undermine it in other cases, and we'll have a huge problem. And yes, good you're pointing out, Elisa. Yes, power of the court is definitely a timely topic, certainly in Israel right now. So it's a problem, and maybe bringing that up is very relevant because it's a problem when people don't believe in the court system, and that's what's going on. One of the problems in Israel is that people think that the court system isn't a good system. And some people think, there's other obviously people who think it is a good court, right? But the problem is when people start doubting the courts, that's very, very problematic in a society because they're the ones who are upholding the law. And if we don't trust the way they're upholding the law, we have serious problems on our hands, which is what's going on here. So now they say the following. Rashbag, okay, so Rebbe, we understand really, even though, okay, so on the one hand, Rashbag has a very good claim, which is we're going to undermine the power of the courts. And that's always something we have to really uphold. By the way, this connects with those famous sugyot, which we're going to get to in Sanhedrin, about what if the court tells you all yamin is small and small is yamin, that your right is your left and your left is your right. And there it gets into this whole thing in the Zakei Mamre topic about people going against the court and how you have to uphold the court because otherwise, and then the question is to what extent. What if they're really telling you something that you know for sure is wrong? And there's all different opinions about that. We'll get to that in Sanhedrin. But right now, we're here. Rebbe makes a lot of sense. Why does Rebbe make a lot of sense? Even though it doesn't make sense in terms of the court issue and the takana issue. But on a Torah level, let's just go back to basic laws. This person gave a get, but canceled it before it got to her. So while it's true he's going against Rabban Gamliel's takana, this get was given without the will of the husband. There is no such thing. So the Gemara starts questioning Rashbag based on that. Could it possibly be that what you're saying is true? That there's, on a Torah level, the get is not a get. But on a rabbinic level, because we're worried about the power of the court, this is a little bit saying it's not that important, right? Because of the power of the court, we're going to permit a married woman to go marry somebody else? Like that's always, that's a line we're not willing to cross. Having someone who's technically by Torah law a married woman, we're now going to say, in order to uphold the power of the court, because Rabban Gamliel made a takana, we have to enforce it. We're going to allow this woman who technically by Torah law is married, allow her to marry somebody else? That's crazy. And not only that, but we need to find a way that this could work technically. Like how does this woman is a married woman by Torah law. So how could that possibly be? To which the Gemara answers, big, very, very important statement. Yes, they can. Why? Anyone who gets betrothed based on the opinion, based on the laws of the rabbis. Okay, this is what we say under the chuppah. Man says, you are betrothed to me. Kidat Moshe Yisrael. According to the religion of Moshe Yisrael, of Moshe and the Jewish people, which basically means, right, by Torah law and by rabbinic law. Like I'm betrothing you according to the rules of the rabbis. So now, since that's the case, and this person went against the rabbis, he didn't do his marriage according to the laws of the rabbis, because the laws of the rabbis are you can't cancel a get in this way. And he did. Afki'inhu rabanan l'kiddushin minei. They said basically you didn't fulfill your condition when you said your kiddushin, and we're going to basically uproot your marriage in the first place. So therefore, while this get might not be a good get, you don't even need a get because you're not even married in the first place. Because they basically undo the kiddushin. This is a huge sugya. Why is it a huge sugya? Because it's one of the attempts that people make nowadays to try to resolve agunot problems. Because what's the problem? Get is more one-sided, as the man can, without the will of the man, you can't have a get. So if the husband is unwilling to give a get to a wife, what can you do? well, let's just do afki'inhu kiddushin, uproot the kiddushin. Now, why is this not widely used? And if you look in Tshuvot, okay, there's lots of Tshuvot that have been written trying to use hafka'at kiddushin, and generally they don't allow it. This sugya comes up 4 times. We saw it in Ketubot already. And it usually comes, in most of the cases, it's where the husband has done something wrong, right? That like it has to work in a particular manner for it to be effective. And they're not always willing to, right? In other words, some people suggest that what you could try to create a situation where he does it against the laws. There's all sorts of ways of trying to use this, but it's not so easy. People aren't so flexible about saying, oh yeah, let's just use this across the board. Okay, because it's a bit of a dangerous thing once you start stretching this too much. There are times where they try to look back at the wedding, and if there weren't kosher witnesses and it wasn't done in a proper manner, then they really can undo the kiddushin. But if it was a halachic marriage and everything was done right, it's much harder to do the annulling of the marriage in the first place. Anyway, this is a very central sugi used in other places. Okay, so now I'm going to leave it at that though, because we don't have time to get into all these cases that are interesting. So now we have a question about this afki'inhu kiddushin though. How does it really work? They ask the following question. There's different ways you can betroth a woman. You can betroth a woman with a get, with money, with a shtar. They don't relate to the shtar at all in this question, or bibi'ah, with sexual relations. So if a man has relations with a wife with the intent to do it for kiddushin, and both, remember in kiddushin you have to have the agreement of both, he can betroth her in that way. He can also betroth her by giving her money, which we do nowadays, which is a ring, which has the value of money. So if it's money, we understand. The rabbis can easily say, because rabbis also have power in the world of money, of moving one person's money to another person or things like that. And they could just simply say, oh, you gave her this for kiddushin? Well, we're going to say it wasn't kiddushin because you broke the rules. You really gave it to her just as a gift. It was a random gift and it wasn't l'shem kiddushin. But what can you do with an act of sexual relations? He had sexual relations with her with the intent to betroth her. How can you change the what it was intended for? Like, what are you going to change it to? To which the Gemara says, well, very simply, Shavi rabanan lebilato bilatznud. We just say that he slept with her out of marriage, as a znut relationship. It was a random relationship and not for the purposes of betrothal. And then there's a way that you can you can kind of say it was for this purpose and not that purpose. So then it works just like the money, where they can have the power to just say, oh yeah, it was for this and not for that. So basically, we had, just to review for today, we started with the 2 versus 3. Where does Rav Nachman get that court could be 2? Then we move to connect that machloket to the tikkun olam of Rabban Gamliel and say basically, either you hold 2 and then you think the whole problem is the woman won't hear, and that's why Rabban Gamliel instituted takana because of mamzarim, or it's 3, that's not the concern, it must be agunot, we want to prevent the husband from leaving his wife in agunot. Then we went on to what if he goes against the takana? We saw that Rebbe holds it's nullified anyway, which makes sense on a Torah level, that on the Torah level, this was a get without his will. So while it's important to make takanot, but if the husband goes against them, we have really no choice. Whereas Rashbag says, no, it really doesn't work because we have something called the power of the court, and that has to be upheld. Technically speaking, how does this work then? Well, we just basically undo the kiddushin. Because he went against it, we allow the rabbis to undo the kiddushin from the beginning. It's not that the get is a good get. It's just that you don't even need the get. And that's how they resolve it. Okay, next sugya. Tanu rabanan. Amar la'asara kitvu get lishti. Somebody says to 10 people, write a get to my wife. We already learned if somebody says 10 people, write a get to my wife, what has to happen? 1 person writes, and then 2 people give the get, and the rest of them were just there. He just wanted to say it in a public way, but they're not really relevant. So therefore, if you say, kitvu get lishti, yachol levatel zeh shelo b'fnei zeh. We'll get to why this is in a minute. We're going to have 2 explanations of this machloket. That's divrei Rebbe. By the way, there's a chart for today. So if you haven't opened the study guide, you can look at the study guide and follow inside. It will open it soon. So basically, right now, we're going to see Rebbi and Rashbag have an argument, and then we're going to have 2 ways of understanding their argument. Rashbag says, you can only, if you said to 10 people, write a get to my wife, the only way to cancel that is to say it in front of, gather those 10 people again and cancel it in front of them. Why? We're going to see. And what does it mean? You can and can't is going to be redefined based on each understanding. I'll just kind of preface it with that. What's the root of the machlok? According to the reading, the first reading of this machloket, the machloket is, if you have a edut that's partially canceled, is the whole thing canceled or not? So Rebbi savar, edut shebetela mitzata, moving now to Amud Bet, lo betela kula. If you cancel some witnesses, let's say, right, you said something in front of 10, there were 10 witnesses. You want to cancel what you said? Can you cancel it in front of just some of them or not? So Rebbi says you can cancel some of them, okay, without the others being canceled. In other words, you cancel some, the others can still go ahead and do what you wanted them to do. And therefore, and this is a question, what did I mean when if I said to 10 of you, go do something for me, and then I would go to 2 of you and I say, I don't want you to do this. Did I mean, I don't want you to do this, but I'm happy for the other 8 people to do it? Okay, that's one way of understanding him. That what he really did was he didn't cancel. He didn't say, I don't want to not give the get. He just said, I don't want you to give the get. Okay, or I want to cancel your shlichut. Okay, but the other ones can do it. So now, if we hold that when I canceled, the husband canceled 2, the other 8 could still go ahead and do it, well, then there's no problem to cancel zeh shelo b'fnei zeh because they're not connected anymore. What's the worst that can happen? Some of the 8 people that are left, Azlehanach, the left ones, Katve v'yave, let's say they wrote a get and gave it to her, Lichtabu v'leitvu, so why not? Because if you hold, when you cancel the testimony of 2, you cancel the edut of 2, it doesn't nullify the rest of them. The other ones can still go ahead and do it. Well, then, so great. What's the problem? There is no problem. But Rashbag saval edut shebetela mitzata b'tela kula. If this man said, go write a get to my wife, and he said it in front of 10 people, and then he canceled 2 of them, he actually canceled the whole thing. He meant, I don't want to give a get to my wife. Now, if he only tells 2 people, we can already see what's going to happen. This connects it to the previous level, which is, right, Hanach lo yade, they won't know, the other 8. We're back to our problem of mamzarim and problem of eshedish. This woman is a married woman. She's not going to know because those 8 people will never hear. They'll go give the get, and it's really their testimony was canceled. So that's option number 1 to understanding this machloket. Option number 2. Everyone agrees with what we said Rebbe agreed with last time, that an edut that's canceled, the rest of it, if I cancel 2, the rest of it aren't canceled. But, so how do we explain Rashbag? Why does Rashbag say then you can't do it? Theoretically, we're not worried about mamzarim problems, so the other 8 will go do it. Totally different reason. And I know Yachol is not going to be, it's forbidden, but it's going to mean something different. He thinks that if you did something in front of 10 people, if you want to undo it, you need to undo it in front of all 10 people. Therefore, if you tried to nullify it in front of 2, it's not effective. So Eino Yachol doesn't mean it's forbidden because of a mamzarim problem or an eshedish problem that this married woman will now go marry someone else. Eino Yachol of Rashbag, according to the second reading, means it's not effective at all. You didn't do anything. If I said it in front of 10, I have to undo it in front of 10. Okay, so here I'm going to pull up the study guide for a minute, and I'm going to show you this in the chart. Okay, it's in Hebrew, but we'll try to follow. So what I put here in the chart is a whole bunch of questions, like a whole bunch of issues. So according to the first way of understanding the machloket, that Yachol means permitted, and Ino Yachol means forbidden because of a mamzarim problem, right? Like takana Rabban Gamliel, and then it's totally connected. So again, according to Rebbe, if you cancel some of it, the rest of it isn't. So therefore, is it effective to cancel the 2? Yes. Are all 10 canceled? No, because you canceled 2, the rest of the 8 can do it. Therefore, it's not forbidden according to takana Rabban Gamliel because everyone can go and do it. According to Rashbag, the whole thing is. Are the 2 canceled? Yes. Are the 10 canceled? Yes. It's exactly why it's forbidden, because we're worried that they'll give her the get and she won't know that they won't know it's canceled and we'll have a problem. According to the second reading, here we're going to see where the differences lie. Edut is not canceled according to anybody. So according to this, right? In other words, the rest of it is not canceled, but our machloket is, are even the two canceled? And according to Rashbag, the two even aren't canceled. Everyone can go give that get because it's not effective to cancel in front of two people. You have to have all 10 people there. And according to Rebbi, it is canceled because he doesn't have this concept that you need to cancel it in front of 10. Is anything forbidden according to Rabban Gamliel? Not at all. It has nothing to do with it. This is just, is it effective, this cancellation? Is it not effective? Okay. And then no matter what, the other 10 aren't canceled because they do it. So even if you say it's effective or not effective, right? Even if you say it's effective, still the other 10 aren't canceled. And if you say it's not effective, well, then obviously the other 10 aren't canceled because even the first 2 aren't canceled. Now we get to another question based on this. What if he said to 10, all of you write the get to my wife? Now, if you remember, we learned that when you say all of you write the get to my wife, we said that all of them need to sign. So now the question is this. Do we say, Tama de Rashbag, Mishum de Kasavari, Ducha Betela Mitzata, Betela Kula? Does he say that once you cancel 2, you cancel everyone? And then before we said it's a problem because of takana Rabban Gamliel, because what? The other 8 won't ever find out. But in this case, the other 8 will definitely find out. Why will they find out? Because they all have to sign. And if you're missing signatures, then you can't give the get. So in this case, there's actually no concern for the takana Rabban Gamliel. And then Rashbag would say differently. Since he said all of you, there's no way the get will ever be written because maybe 8 will sign, but they'll go to get the signatures of the other 2, and the other 2 will say, "What are you talking about? He already canceled it." And then, well, the get will never be given. So there's no worry about this mamzarim problem or ish problem. Oh, Dilma, but if we go with option 2 of Rashbag, that Eino Yachol means it's not effective, then Dilma Tama de Rashbag Nishum de Kasavar Kol Milta de Metav de Babe Asarat Tzricha Be'asara L'Mishlape. Well, then kulchem will be the exact same thing. Still, he'll say Eino Yachol. Okay, so if we go with option 1, kulchem Eino Yachol meant asur according to Rashbag because of the takana. In this case of kulchem, it will be permitted because there's no reason for the takana. But if you say Eino Yachol is it's not effective, well, it's not effective whether you said kulchem or whether you didn't say kulchem because again, anything that was done in front of 10 needs 10 to undo it. Okay, it's a little bit complicated, but I hope that the charts help you in the reorganize. So now we want to figure out what's the case of kulchem. So we're going to bring a case where it's similar to kulchem, although we'll debate whether it is or not. Right now we're going to think it is. Somebody says to 2 people, give a get to my wife. He can cancel one without the other because obviously, right, they're not going to go give her the get because they need both of them to do it. Divrei Rebbi. Rashbag omer eno yachol levatel ela zeh bifnei zeh. Rashbag disagrees and says, no, you can only cancel one in front of the other. Now, obviously, he's not worried about the get will get to the wife, option number 1, and therefore, takana Rabban Gamliel don't allow this. No, it must be, it's not effective to cancel one without the other because it was done in front of 2. You need to cancel it in front of 2. So actually, the cancellation is ineffective entirely, according to him, in which case you can actually give the get. So now they're going to say, isn't Shnayim dechi kulchem damu? Shnayim is like kulchem because it's a case where both are necessary because you can't have a get without 2 adim signed on it. Upligim, what do you see? There's a machloket. So kulchem, there's a machloket, and then we go with option 2 of Rashbag, of the machloket. But maybe you didn't pay attention. I specifically didn't say it when I was reading it, but it says here, shnu get lishti. It doesn't say kitbu. Kitbu means write and sign. Shnu means give a get. Now, it could mean write and sign and give the get. It could also just mean be my shaliach to bring the get. Now, how many people need to bring a get? Only 1. So comes Rav Ashi and says, if this Breita was talking about the writing of the get, hachinami, I would agree with you because you need both. But and you could say, what's this Breita talking about? With the messenger, which is only 1 person. And then you don't need both, right? In other words, again, then it would go back to Yachol, Eino Yachol Levatel Ela Zeh B'fnei Zeh, because Educha, you could say Educha B'tela Mitzata B'tela Kula, the whole thing is canceled. and then the one won't hear, the other one will go bring it. He won't know that it was canceled. And that's why Rashbag doesn't allow it. And then it's back to option 1, possibly. So it doesn't prove it. It doesn't prove definitely option 2. Hakinami mistabra, and you can further prove this to katana seif, because the end of that braita says, Amar lezeh b'fnei atzmo yachol levatel zeh shelo b'fnei zeh. If he told one separately and said, go bring a get to my wife, and then he told another one on a different occasion, not in front of the other, go give a get to my wife, you can cancel zeh shelo b'fnei zeh. Even Rashbag agrees that you can nullify it, one in front of the other. Now, how does this prove anything? Well, you have to know another halachic principle. It makes sense. The whole idea now is, can you appoint one messenger by himself? One of them and then the other separate. If you're talking about a messenger. So this is a case where basically I gave 2 people the same job to do, okay? The husband says, go bring my get to my wife, and the husband says, go bring my get to my wife, to 2 different people. Then if he wants to cancel one of them, let's say, right, he decided later, I want to have this one, he can go cancel the other one. Obviously, Rashbag has no problem with that. That's something to, right? That makes sense that Rashbag would agree with that. But but if he appointed this one and said, go write a get to my wife, and then the next day he went to someone else separately and said, go write a get to my wife, that's not effective. You need 2 to write and sign the get, basically. Write means sign. So you need 2 to sign the get. If he told them each on separately without the other one being there, that's not effective. Why is it not effective? Well, it wouldn't even be, they wouldn't be able to even do this. You wouldn't even be able to get started. To forget about talking about how can you nullify it, it's nothing. Why is it nothing? It was said that you can't, okay, now this goes to something else. If you're witnesses to a murder or to a loan being taken, you can only be witnesses, according to takana, you can only be witnesses if you saw it together. Now, witnesses who sign on a get are basically signing on the fact that the husband told us that he wants to write a get to his wife. So they're basically witnesses to what the husband told them. They can only be witnesses to what the husband told them if they were together. So this would never happen if it was Eidei Ktiva. And that's how they prove what Rav Ashi said, which it must be Eidei Holacha, must be the messenger, which could only be one, which then teaches us nothing about Kulchem because you don't need both of them. To which the Gemara rejects that proof anyway, doesn't reject Rav Ashi's point, but it says, say this doesn't prove anything because Dilma Rabbi Shimon Korcha Svirale. You quoted Tanakama. Rabbi Shimon Korcha disagrees and says, if I saw a murder from one place and you saw it from a totally different place, we weren't together and we didn't see it together, we can both go testify separately and that's accepted as 2 witnesses. So that's like a debate between Shimon Korcha and the rabbis. So you could say, theoretically, this braita could hold like Rabbi Shimon Korcha, that they actually could have been witnesses and then it would be a relevant case. So it didn't really prove what they were trying to prove. Okay, so what we did, again, so far, let's just review. First, Rav Nachman, his proof of the 2 versus the 3, how he gets beitin could be 2. Tikkun olam, 2 options, Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, what the tikkun olam is, mamzarim or agunot. 3, what if you go against takana Rabban Gamliel? Is it effective or not? Machloket, Rebbi and Rashbag. Do we say makoch beitin yafeh? That's Rashbag, right? We have to give power to the court, so it's not effective. And Rebbi says, what do you mean by Torah law? This isn't a get. You're not divorced. Then we had this other machloka between Rebbi and Rashbag about Amar Lasarak if get ishti. Can you cancel it zeh shelo b'fnei zeh, or is it effective if you cancel it zeh shelo b'fnei zeh? 2 ways of understanding it. Now we want to know how we hold in those 2 machlokot between Rebbi and Rashbag. So Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, we're going to have 2 statements here. Maybe we'll get to the 3rd also, but the 2 are more elaborate. Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda says, Shmat minei de Rabbi Abba tarti. I heard 2 piskei halacha in the name of Rabbi Abba. I heard it from Rabbi Abba, or in the name of Rabbi Abba. Then on one issue we pass like Rebbi, on another like Rashbag. But I didn't know which one like which. So then Rav Yosef comes and says, I'm a Rav Yosef, we can figure it out. How so? Well, let's take the following thing that happens. There was a case where the court did an assessment of orphans' property, and they messed up. Okay, they basically messed up the evaluation of the land by more than or less than a 1/6. That's laws of ona'ah, where you mess up the evaluation. You sell something for more or less than a 1/6 of its worth. But usually we say it's canceled. Now the court did the assessment, and then what happened was one said it's canceled, because it's onah, it goes against Torah law. That would be Rebbi. Rashbag says, if we start questioning the court's assessments, then makoch beidin yafeh, we're going to have a major problem on our hands. People are going to basically doubt the court. What happened in this case? Rebbi ended up agreeing with the rabbis who were on Rashbag's side. Amar lefanav Rabbi Parta ben Osher Rabbi Elazar ben Parta ben Osher Rabbi Parta Gadol. Okay, they're just giving his genealogy. Im ke makoch beidin yafeh. That's what happened in the case was he got up and he said, if you're not going to agree with them, makoch beitin yafeh, if we start on doing this deal, b'chazar Rebbi b'asar Rashbag. And Rebbi ended up ruling, okay, I agree with you. So if Rebbi himself agreed with makoch beitin yafeh in that case, we can assume Rebbi agreed with Rashbag here, in which case we can assume we pass them like Rashbag about bitlo eno mevutal, that the get is not canceled if you go against Rabban Gamliel. And then, since he said one like Rebbi, one like Rashbag, once we figured out that you must hold like Rashbag in that case, midahak Rabban Shimon Gamliel hak Rebbi. When it comes to canceling the get one without the other, that you can do. And second person, af Rabbi Yoshai de min usha sabar chad Rebbi v'chad Rashbag. Now here we're going to learn it a little bit differently. And again, one like Rebbi, one like Rashbag. Let's see if he comes to the same conclusion. Rabbi told us a story. So now we're going to see a story that came before him. There were 5 rabbis, and from what happens in this story, we're going to infer what the psak was. So a case came up. Okay, if you didn't think that there were mesuravot yet in those days, there definitely weren't. We're going to start to see a whole bunch of cases. We're starting the really interesting dapim of all these kind of cases. So now what happened? There was a guy, they forced him to give a get against his will. What does that mean? It means you put sanctions on him, beat him up, do what you can to get him to give the get. He finally agreed to give the get. And he said, fine, go write a get and give it to my wife. Now, what did he tell the 5 rabbis to do at that point? Amar lan, he said to them, Zilu atmuru v'kitria. Go hide right now and give her the get. And write the get and give it to her, right? As quickly as possible, but do it in hiding. We have to figure this out. Now, if you hold like Rabbis, but this guy anyway was a no good, right? This guy didn't want to give a get to his wife until we put sanctions on him and all that. He didn't even agree. So if we hold like Rebbi that he could go cancel it in a court against the takana of Rabban Gamliel and it'll be effective, then kimit maru ma'ihave. How does it help that they hid? So it must be he didn't hold like Rebbi that if he canceled it, it would be canceled. He held like Rashbag that the only way to cancel it is to stop the messengers. So basically, he told the messengers, go hide so he won't find you. Number 2, now that explains that he holds like Rashbag in the first machloket. How do we know that he holds like Rebbi, though, in the machloket of Yachol levatel zeh shelo b'fnei zeh? It wasn't like the previous case. The previous case, all we had to do was prove one side, because he knew that the psak was one like this and one like that. So once you prove one, you have the answer for the other. In this case, he didn't know anything about what he held. But from the story, we can infer, number 1, he obviously held, if he cancels it anyway, it won't be effective. So therefore, hiding was going to work. Number 2, from the fact that he told him to hide, and we're going to see, and didn't tell him go scatter into all different places so that he can't get you all in the same place, that proves what? Right? If you think he holds that you can cancel one without the other, then lama lehu itmure libadru ibadru. Then why do they have to hide? They could have just scattered, and then he wouldn't be able to cancel it without finding all of them. So if they scatter, now, why would you rather scatter them than hide them? Because who wants to be in hiding, right? They'd rather, each one go back to your house or make sure you're in far distance from each other, and he can't get you all together because if you hold like Rashbag, the only way to cancel is to have you all in the same place. So therefore, it proves that he doesn't hold like Rashbag on that machloket, and there we have, he holds like Rebbi in the second machloket and Rashbag in the first, just like the previous talk that we just saw. But then we're going to end with Rav Nachman halakaki Rebbi b'shtehen. Rav says in the name of Rav Nachman, we pass him like Rebbi in both, actually holding the yes bitlo will be mevutal if he goes against the takana. And then we're going to ask the question, which we'll get to tomorrow, but lately the Rav Nachman, makoch beitin yafeh. What does the Rav Nachman not hold? That we have to uphold the power of the court, and we're going to prove that Rav Nachman in some other case does hold we have to uphold the power of the court. So how's this going to work out with this case? And we'll get to that tomorrow. Okay, so at the end of our daf, we basically tried to just figure out of those 2 big machlokot that we discussed today, which one do we hold like who do we hold in which case? And we seem to, in the beginning, at least gotten 2 opinions of like Rashbag in the makoch beitin yafeh, we are going to uphold the power of the court, and like Rebbi in the other one of because it's just not effective. Right? In other words, it won't, by canceling one, you're not actually canceling the others. So therefore, you can cancel one without the other. And therefore, he told them all, go hide so that he can't find any of you, because that then he could really effectively cancel the get. And then we got to Rava, who said the name of Rav Nachman. We actually passed like Rebbi in both, and we'll deal with that question on him tomorrow. Have a great day, everyone. Shavua.